Dr. Márcia Costa is a senior editor at the Lancet Oncology. She studied biomedical engineering and biophysics at the University of Lisbon, followed by PhD in cancer therapy at the Institute of Cancer Research. After a postdoctoral position at the same institute, of course, she joined the Lancet as an assistant editor in 2018 and became a member of the Lancet Oncology. Nice having you, Márcia. The dice is yours.
Hi, hello. Thank you. I'm going to share my screen now. Well, thank you very much for the invitation to contribute for this conference. And obviously, thank you for the opportunity to talk about the impact of medical journals in medicine in general, but more specifically for cancer. 2020 with a worldwide pandemic showed us a very different side of globalization, and with that, the importance of international cooperation and of high quality data to enable political decision-making, because governments can only take the appropriate measures if data exists, are reliable and accurate, and medical journals in particular play a big part in the revision and disclosure of these data. We always start our talks by discussing a bit about Thomas Wackley, who founded the Lancet in 1823, because he created the ethos that the Lancet family of journals still follows. He was a surgeon and a coroner, but also a member of the English Parliament. And when he founded the Lancet, his aim was not only to publish cutting-edge medical research, but also use the journal as an advocacy tool to implement changes in society. And in that, he was extremely vocal about incompetence and nepotism. Nowadays, perhaps in a more restrict way, the Lancet family still aims to have a public voice in society, including in terms of equality and human rights, as we believe health is a fundamental right to all. And I mentioned the Lancet family because the journal has expanded in the past 20 years. The first journal being launched after the Lancet, which we now refer to as the weekly, was the Lancet Oncology in 2000, which reflected not only the increasing content being submitted to the journal, but also the fact that cancer research, likely due to the increasing burden, is probably the most prevalent type of research worldwide. And the family kept growing, always based on the demand. So we have now a wide variety of journals. The more recent ones are open access in a commitment to open science, which I will approach later on. And 3 were launched in 2020, despite all that was going on around the world. We still managed to get them out. So again, what drives us? We are deeply committed to publish the best science for better lives. And so we look for high quality, novel, and reliable science. We try to act as quickly as possible because we know that this can save lives, either via our publishing route with fast track publications or in the way we speak up our public views. And as I mentioned, we still follow the principles of Thomas Wackley. So we tend to be a political journal. We are aware of the existing health disparities, and so we campaign for health equity and for the right of health to all. And that sometimes does imply to hold those in power accountable for their actions. And we have found several ways to reach these goals. So besides the articles and reviews we publish, which are always cutting edge and have real clinical implications, we also publish series, which are bundles of several papers in one topic, each paper on a specific subject. We contribute for writing up of treatment guidelines, and we also co-organize conferences where our authors can present their work. Another way editors in particular have to express their opinions is through editorials. And we have now a few examples here. So speaking of the role of the journal worldwide and the cancer burden, I have some examples of different types of manuscripts we published. In this case, with topics related to the Gulf region. So we have, for example, an article on another coronavirus in 2013, the Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, an editorial written in 2014 that reflected on the increasing cancer burden in the region after a meeting held in October that year, where several proposals were done to slow cancer increase in the Gulf region. And then editorials are always a good way to call for action from either governments or other agencies. And the third example is a policy review on tackling cancer control in the Gulf region. So this type of paper generally has a broad review of the literature and policies in place for a certain topic, and then proposes a series of recommendations that can be adopted by governments or other political authorities in order to improve healthcare systems. But one of the publications we are mostly proud of is our commissions. So our commission program is for sure our largest project because they tend to deal with quite broad topics. Frequently, it takes several years from commissioning to publishing and involves dozens of authors spread globally. The main goal of the commissions is to highlight health disparities, but importantly, to provide solutions and ensure health justice for all. They are designed to provide comprehensive evidence for decision makers. And as I mentioned, they involve quite broad topics. So global cancer control is one of the main ones, and I will show you some examples in the next slide. As we know, cancer burden keeps increasing, particularly in low and middle income countries. And obviously a big component of our commissions is health economics. So how to find solutions for affordable cancer care and improve efficiency of our healthcare systems. So this year, the Lancet Oncology turned 20 in September. And you can see on the right hand of the slide, the cover of our September issue, and is a cover that we wanted to portray hope in cancer research and the control of cancer burden. And in that issue, we reflected on all our commissions, those we published already and those who are coming up in the next 2 or 3 years. And as you can see from the covers of the booklets, we always aim for broad topics, and then these are discussed not only in Europe or the USA, but globally. So we have examples of cancer control in Latin America and the Caribbean, but also in China, India, Russia. And our radiotherapy commission, published in 2015, was one of the most successful ones because it really pushed radiotherapy as a main component of cancer treatment and highlighted the need for more machines in Africa, for example. I would also like to briefly mention one other resource we developed, the Cancer Control Hub, where you can find all the recent series, commissions, policy reviews published at the Lancet Oncology, separated by topics. So evidence can be easily found if you need information on a specific area, from prevention to survivorship, but also global oncology and healthcare systems. And again, to highlight some of the events we co-organize or participate in, and to highlight our commitment to political intervention, we actually go to places where action is needed to provide evidence and to encourage discussion on these topics. And we have some photos here of one of our events in São Paulo, Brazil in 2013, where we gathered not only doctors, but agencies and governments to present the results of our commission on cancer control in Latin America. I show here also our event with the Chinese Society of Clinical Oncology. And finally, very proudly, on the bottom right of the slide, we can see David Collingridge, who is the editor-in-chief of the Lancet Oncology in 2017 in New York with Joe Biden, now president-elect of the USA, and who supported our commission on cancer research priorities in the USA, which we launched after the US Moonshot Cancer Initiative. And as a note, several of our journals are hybrid. So they still have a component of subscriptions. That's how our publishing work started. But the Lancet family is very committed to open science because we believe that's the way we can provide access to our research worldwide, while preserving the excellent value as a highly respected medical journal. Now, open science can have many forms and shapes, and open access is obviously one of those strategies. So we have several journals that are now fully open access, but our hybrid journals also offer that option for papers which research was funded by one of the bodies that has signed up for Plan S. Other strategies are Research for Life. So the Lancet family of journals is made freely available online to all readers in the world's most resource-poor countries. All our articles now require a data sharing statement, so we are keen that the data is shared with other researchers, especially now when big data, and we've heard a lot about it in this conference. Big data is so important for medicine and allows us to explore more research, in some cases without the need of actually doing or repeating clinical trials. And finally, in 2018, the Lancet family of journals created a preprint platform where health and medical scientists can now share their work in their research early in their publication process. Of course, this year we have to mention COVID-19 and the role of journals such as ours to provide evidence for decision-making. Obviously, across all the journals, we have received an impressive amount of submissions, and we had to do several adjustments to our workflow to cope with the rapid amount of research that was coming in every week. And again, the Lancet created a hub very similar to the hub we have for the Lancet Oncology Cancer Control project, where you can find every paper about COVID that has been published across all journals. So you can now find them online and for now free of charge. And we did this so that any healthcare worker, researcher, but also any agency such as the World Health Organization could easily access all our new cutting edge, high quality research on COVID. And finally, also in another commitment to influence societal behaviors, the Lancet family of journals has been a great advocate for diversity in all its forms. So gender, race and ethnicity, geographic location, religion, among others. We are very serious about our pledge, both internally, so we make an active effort to improve the diversity of our editors, authors, and reviewers when we commission any content, but also externally. So it is clear in our website and any other form of communication with authors that we expect them also to pay attention to this pledge, particularly for reviews, commissions, and series. So obviously now a very important question we get as editors, which is how do we get published in a high impact factor journal? As I've mentioned, we always receive a huge amount of submissions and publish a very small proportion of those. And as a first rule, as editors, we look for what is novel, what's current, and what can change clinical practice in the case of medical journals. And yes, that means that sometimes we will publish negative results. So I have a list of types of trials and studies we aim to publish. Some of these I've already mentioned. Novel and clinical practice changing trials are obviously on the top of our priorities. Sometimes not only the novel one, but the last trial that solves the remaining questions on a topic. So we like those as well because they work as definitive proof that, ends a cycle. Challenges to conventional dogma, and here is when sometimes we do publish negative trials. So let's say if the scientific community is expecting a certain drug to perform well for one type of cancer, but that may not be the case, we will still want to know and to publish those results. And all our papers must have solid methodology. They are peer-reviewed by at least 3 clinical reviewers and 1 statistician. So we want to make sure the science that has been made has been done properly. And we do tend to prefer trials with a wide demographic applicability. So for some series and commissions, we like them to be very region specific, but for trials, we like data that can be applied for other regions as well. On the other hand, lack of novelty is one of the most common barriers to get published. Particularly for clinical trials, redundancy is not what we were looking for, because we don't want to publish trials that are just reinforcing something that has been said or that is already known for the community. And actually, even regulators don't generally approve this type of trial anyway. And another common barrier is lack of defined objectives. So when it's not clear what the purpose of the study actually was before it started. And associated with this comes inappropriate analysis or spun results. So as I've mentioned, our papers are thoroughly peer-reviewed and they're also sub-edited after acceptance. So we always advise that it's best to be clear and concise in the front about what has actually been done and report it accordingly, then trying to spun the results, because just makes acceptance and the whole other process is harder. Obviously, the topic must be in the remit of the journal, and finally, writing and presentation are also important. As I've mentioned, although our papers are sub-edited after acceptance, but at the earliest stages, if the editors or reviewers cannot really understand the paper, it makes it a bit difficult to understand the science as well. And we are obviously very sensitive to the fact that loads of our authors are not native English speakers, but several companies, including Elsevier, do provide editing services in case they are needed. Now, the work starts even before the submission, and I have some advice in this phase as well. Please always make sure that you read the guidelines for authors. I think they are just there to make your job as authors and my job as an editor, to make it much easier. It avoids delay for publication and makes the acceptance of the paper slightly faster. Make sure you report according to the guidelines available. They have all the minimum requirements to ensure an appropriate reporting of the studies. For example, for clinical trials, you should always follow consort guidelines. If this is not done before submission, it will have to be done before assessing or accepting the paper anyway. So you have the website where you can find our guidelines. And finally, check that your clinical trial has been registered, and this should actually be done even before you start recruiting your patients. Because this ensures transparency and makes sure the information is available publicly, even for interested patients. And then as a final—
1 minute remaining.
Yeah, thank you. Just as a final note, transparency is extremely important to get published. So make sure you always disclose your conflicts of interest. So if you have any patents, like agreements with pharma companies, we want to know about it. It doesn't mean anything more than we want transparency in our papers. Make sure the role of the funding source is clearly stated. These days, after September, we require that at least 2 academic authors have fully reviewed the data. I've mentioned data sharing. This is a very important one now for the reasons I've mentioned before. And be careful with plagiarism. We do look for that. We have software and we do look online to make sure this is not repeating any previously published information. And with that, I'd like to say thank you. And I look forward for your questions at the end of the session. Thanks.